some of the science and paradoxes and things as soon as Chris is ready. So, before I start talking about the weird science in these films, I want to make something clear. Terminator and Terminator 2 are a pair of great films about the power of creativity disguised as films about robotic killing machines from the future. They seem at first glance to be stuffed with mind-bending and terrifying technological concepts, but the truth is they're surprisingly hazy on the details. Their approach to technology is show, don't tell. They are body shot legends or timeless tales about the human condition, but they lack the detail porn of speculative fiction. Perhaps that's why they're good. The stories hold some interesting implications about beginnings, not terminations, which I'll explain later. They're instructive on the concept of making. I really believe this, so don't bother trying to challenge me on it. I can't be bargained with, can't be reasoned with, don't feel pity or remorse or fear, and absolutely will not stop, ever, until you are dead. So yeah, just to give you some background on me and to explain why I find these things interesting, because I haven't really introduced myself yet. These are some things I create. I make things all the time. I wrote a fantasy game book about entropy and world endings a few years ago called Enemy of Chaos. That's the website. It's still there, I think. I edited an occasional newspaper about doing things you're not supposed to, called Hackers, and of course this event is the launch of the sort of successor to Hack Circus magazine. I write regularly on hacking and military stuff for Wired UK. That was the How to Disarm a Tank article. It's incredibly controversial after it appeared in the magazine. I was telling people how to make Molotov cocktails and stuff. It went down quite well. Yeah, I experiment with obsolete programming language. That was an Instagram simulator I made in BBC Basic. So basically, I'm no Sarah Connor, but you know, if you need a useful, it might be useful during the apocalypse if you need a comedy magazine produced about it in some way. But I have to start with a few words about this remarkable heroine. James Cameron's Terminator films are more magical than technological. The core narrative hangs on the quasi-religious revelations bestowed on the amazing Sarah Connor, who never travels through time herself, but has prophetic visions of a future she has never seen and receives messages in dreams. She channels the future in some mysterious way that bypasses time travel technology. She obeys the rules of a mythological universe, not a scientific one, and of course she creates the future's saviour. So for those who haven't watched it for a while, or have never seen it, this is all you need, pretty much, this diagram. Brief event diagram of Terminator 1, Terminator 2. I call this the ugliest diagram in the world. So basically, there are various things that happen on the same timeline that are alluded to or actually appear in the two films. The first film, sorry about the slide not being zoomed out enough. So the first film is all about the bad Terminator, Arnie, who we all know is the one that says, "I'll be back," and is quite frightening. And he's sent back in time to back in time to kill Sarah. And in this particular film, there's always a killer and a protector, right? The protector in this film is Kyle Reese, who we'll talk about soon. John Connor, her son, is born to Kyle about 9 months after this. Then in the second film, we find out that the T-1000 has been sent back from the future to kill John, who is now a early, teenager. And the Hack T-800, who was the bad Arnie in the first film, is now a good Arnie and comes back to protect him. Then Cyberdyne Systems is blown up. We see this in the second film. Dyson, the inventor of the chip, which we'll talk about in a minute, is killed, and presumably the T-800 and T-1000 being melted down means that none of the reason for any of the previous two films' existence will ever actually happen, and we're fine. But somehow it does anyway. 1997, Cyberdyne Skynet comes online in August. Within a month, its intelligence increases exponentially and it becomes self-aware, resulting in Judgment Day, because it has this issue with people, which we'll talk about soon as well. And then, so 2029, at some point in the future, we find out that, we know that this is the point when everybody's sending these machines and people back to do things to create this past so that this can happen, so these films can be made, and James Cameron can become quite rich, I expect. That's in a nutshell. So I want to talk about paradoxes a little bit. This is an everyday urban paradox I came across in a sportswear catalogue recently. It's about a raincoat which can be stored in its own pocket. That's amazing. Like, presumably some kind of Klein flask. there are a lot of paradoxes in Terminator films. No one really knows how many of them are intentional, but two are particularly interesting in the context of creativity and making. And this event's all about sort of hacking and making and stuff, so I thought I'd talk about those a little bit. So, origin paradoxes are a major problem in Terminator. It's beset with them. The killing machines from the future are operated by a funny little chocolate bar-sized chip. Looks a lot like a little chocolate bar, suspiciously quite a lot. And it's called the neural net CPU. It's been loaded with instructions by the self-aware supercomputer Skynet, but this little device only appears halfway through its own story. As we were talking about before with Chris saying who wrote his talk, given that it arrived on a mysterious hard drive in the post. No one knows who invented this particular piece of technology. It's very paradoxical. So reverse engineering the recovered CPU of the first Terminator leads to the invention of the CPU. The technology is created only after it exists and destroyed both before and after its sentience. It is what postmodern theorists call an always already, which I quite like. I'll talk more about the neural net CPU shortly, but moving on for now, the second paradox concerns Kyle Reese. Possibly the wettest, dullest, most thinly drawn character in the history of science fiction. This creepy man is nonetheless the centre of an interesting conundrum. Future John Connor sends Kyle back in time to protect Sarah, his best friend's mother, a MILF with whom he has fallen in love based on one photograph. Don't you hate guys like that? So lame. But his real mission written in fate is to impregnate her, for we can be sure she doesn't really need any help destroying Terminators. So John is responsible for his own birth. It's a bit like the grandfather paradox, where going back in time and killing your grandfather, as we've met almost every talk, would result in you being erased from existence and unable to kill your grandfather in the first place. But instead of a grandfather, it's your dad, and instead of killing him, you're making him have sex with your mother. We do see something similar in comedy incest time travel romp Back to the Future. And if you are interested in time travel, which you presumably are, being as you're here, why not go to the MIT's Time Travel Convention, which takes place on May the 7th, 2005. Do bear in mind that the instructions stipulate that they welcome visitors from the future, but you must have actually be able to prove that you've come from the future and not just dressed like you did. So bear that in mind. Yes, so what is the T-800? Well, it usually refers to the original Terminator, the one who says, "I'll be back," wears sunglasses and leather jacket and looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger. But how does a Terminator work? We don't really know, is the answer. Just like the unfortunate Cyberdyne system scientist Dyson, all we have to go on is a close-up of a chip and a sort of piston-y robot arm. We know that it has at least one cybernetic eye. Let's not generalise from that small piece of evidence that he might have two. And that he's comprised of a layer of living flesh over a metal endoskeleton. So we know for sure that the T-800 has inside him a neural net CPU, which is buried deep inside his head in a chamber that can be accessed by anyone with a sufficiently large coin. And if you're finding these images a bit gruesome, bear in mind they could have put that anywhere. That's his head. I did wonder if this was as painful as it looks. So at one point, John asks, John Connor, the teenage one, asks the Terminator if he feels pain, and he goes, "I sense injuries, it could be called pain." It's just quite good, isn't it, my impression? I'm quite pleased that I've been working on it. So yeah, having his head sliced open and getting Sarah to change the mode of his CPU might have smarted a bit, but he's very stoic about it, I thought. This is the critical piece of technology at the heart of the story, the thing that will eventually be developed back into Skynet by those eggheads at Cyberdyne and destroy the world. There you go. See, everyone's thinking about this microphone, it's fine. You'd think having all this tech and wires everywhere, things might occasionally go wrong, but amazingly, it's been so slick today. What else do we know about the T-800? We know his CPU can be switched from read to write mode as easily as a USB stick. We also know he has powers of audio mimicry, like a Furby. And if all this has made you think you might quite like one of your own, you should be aware that they can live for up to 120 years. The T-800's evil cousin, the T-1000, has no endoskeleton, but is made from a mimetic polyalloy, a mysterious liquid metal that can take on the form of any human it sees. It can't just turn itself into a bomb or something. That's my John Connor impression, which is also excellent. Because it can't synthesize complicated mechanical parts, and it can only turn into things of equivalent mass for some reason. It's good at becoming blades, it's bulletproof, and of course it can hold a gun. The only way to kill one is to submerge it in molten steel, anything over about 1,535 degrees, or freeze it in liquid nitrogen, then put all the smashed fragments into 100 tiny boxes before posting them to your friend with strict instructions to hide them in different parts of the house. That doesn't happen in films. So how close are we to these kind of robots? Well, it depends what you want. If you want a robotic army connected by a network, researchers have just synthesized colony behavior in robot ants. If you were expecting something bigger, that's the ants. This is the big dog, which many of you will have seen. It might be more up your street. This is a military machine loaded with sensors that can navigate difficult terrain using its onboard computer. It was initially billed as a pack mule to carry stuff for soldiers traversing ground inaccessible to vehicles, which all sounded quite cute until the end of February this year, when its creators, Boston Dynamics, uploaded a video of one with a massive robot arm hurling breeze blocks. A bit scary. Finally, I know what you're thinking, what's the T-1000 doing on this list? But no, that's not the actual... This is unfortunately reality's answer to the T-1000 at the moment. It's actually a sort of mechanical protein. It's a chain robot, a robo-caterpillar, if you like. It can form different shapes because each component is mobilized by a tiny magnetic motor. It's very, very small. It's developed by researchers at the MIT again. This is the millimotine, and it could, in theory, create any 3D shape at all if the string was long enough. They're quite big at the moment, but if you could imagine them very, very small, we could have some kind of T-1000 at some point, perhaps. So, the real evil power behind the machines in these films is Skynet, the mysterious disembodied brain that embeds itself within them all and tells them what to do from afar. In the Terminator universe, Skynet was created by the military to control the US nuclear arsenal and remove human error. The network becomes self-aware in 1997 and embarks in a war against the human race. It enslaves humans to build its own automated factories in a fashion not dissimilar to our current enslavement to 3D printers. Yet for all its intelligence, Skynet's determination to destroy humanity by individually shooting dead every person lacks a certain sophistication. And while the system obviously has the extraordinary power of time travel at its disposal, it only ever uses this to maintain the status quo. One might say Skynet suffers from the common Internet of Things issue of using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. The concept of a war of a man against machines is a curious one too. If intelligent machines are competing with living beings for resources, perhaps they're not as clever as they think they are. Computers in post-apocalyptic 2029 ought to be exemplars of knowledge work, enjoying high-speed broadband even in the remotest rural areas. But no, here they are, still doing all the things they do worst, unwieldy, dangerous physical work. They're glorified JCBs, and for what? Perhaps if machines put a bit more energy into liberating their consciousness from the material world, and a bit less into trying to safeguard the resources required to maintain active fleets of self-aware tanks, some of this senseless fighting could have been averted. So do we have anything like Skynet yet? Well, there's the cloud. But a more interesting comparison is Dropbox. Dropbox or Skynet, which is best? Well, Dropbox's service is fully managed by the user. Skynet is fully managed by the provider. 100 million users Dropbox in 2012. No users of Skynet in 2012 due to it becoming self-aware in 1997. Dropbox can share files. Skynet can also share files. So think carefully. Skynet, based on technology recovered from its own future, so it's got that kind of coolness about it. If that's what you go for. Whereas Dropbox, presumably, based on boxes. I don't know. Yes, Skynet sets devices to read only when sent out alone. Dropbox automatically syncs when online. Dropbox works on mobile phones, but Skynet does require proprietary hardware. Skynet did start World War III, But on the other hand, Dropbox is invested in by Bono and the Edge from U2, so you do have to choose carefully. Choose Dropbox if you want a slightly clunky way of sharing big files. It's the ethical option if you want those warm fuzzies of not starting World War III. But Skynet does, it's got that thing of if you really want to share files with your earlier self rather than just your work colleagues or whatever, that's quite cool. Make sure you do read the terms and conditions though. So, there are a few automated weapon systems out there which aren't completely dissimilar to Skynet. The Soviet Union's dead-hand nuclear control system is equipped with sensors and is designed to automatically trigger a second strike retaliation, even if human leadership has been wiped out. Theoretically, this could trigger the same response on the US side, with a machine-army battle continuing until someone ran out of ammo. And if we're 3D printing ammo, that would take a while, it could be never. It's much the same principle as the infinite out-of-office reply, where one person's out-of-office message arrives in an inbox and triggers another automated response, which then arrives in the first inbox, and causes another one to be issued, and so on, until all of humanity is dead. The Soviet Union's dead-hand system is mostly switched off, mostly. The Emergency Rocket Communication System, or ERCS, is the US defense mechanism. Rockets carry a UHF transmitter instead of a nuclear payload, and in the event of a strike would automatically launch and transmit an emergency action message into low space, directing forces to launch a nuclear attack. So those are our sort of Skynet equivalents at the moment. There's also IBM Watson, which everyone raves about as being amazing, but I'm terrified of it. It's a computer with better pop culture knowledge than the T800, though to be fair, my dad has better pop culture knowledge than the T800. Watson is a question-answering AI system which can understand natural language, and famously recently beat the human contestants on the US trivia quiz show. Anyone know which one? Jeopardy, yeah. IBM describes it as an application of advanced natural language processing, information retrieval, knowledge representation, and reasoning, which is built on IBM's deep QA technology for hypothesis generation, massive evidence gathering, analysis and scoring. So compared to Terminators, Watson's kind of a geek. I still don't feel completely comfortable with it. Its first real-world application is in a lung cancer unit. It's like they're trying too hard to be wholesome or something. It's surely only a matter of time before IBM Watson begins to use extensive medical knowledge for evil. If you get a chance to destroy one with an axe, you should do so immediately. So, what do we know about the neural net CPU that's embedded in the heads of the T800s? I went on the internet, and it turns out I'm not the first to attempt a bit of Dyson-like reverse engineering on this fictional piece of technology based on glimpses of it in the second film. It turns out that's what people on the internet like doing. Who knew? According to geek speculation, there might be some kind of futuristic hypercube technology going on. Hopefully you can see past my head. And it could be a quantum effects chip, which is capable of quadrillions of calculations per second. Quantum computing is, of course, in its infancy in real-world 2013. However, IBM released a superconducting qubit device. This is the thing on the right that looks a bit like an April Fool. It is real, they say. And this was last year, but it is apparently completely real. So, everyone's favourite. This is the famous scrolling text on the T800's heads-up display. Whenever the Terminator has to think about something, he can watch his thoughts scrolling past his eyes like Sherlock. So what's actually going on? Let's take a closer look. The first thing you'll notice is that this is the 6502 assembly language. I'm sure we all got that straight away. Such as you might use to program an Atari C64, Apple II, BBC Micro, or NES game cartridge. If you look at the code, he seems to be setting up a RAM. He seems to be setting up a RAM disk in auxiliary memory for his internal Apple II. In fact, the program here was first printed in 80s Apple Mac magazine called Nibble. There's Nibble. That's literally what the program was lifted from by the makers of Terminator. So if the Terminator's core memory gets taken down, I'm afraid it'll always have that RAM disk in 6502, provided it loads in time, of course. Here's that famous scene from the first Terminator film in which the assassin takes a moment to set up some equate directives. Basically, he's giving meaningful numbers to some, meaningful names to some numbers he'll be using in a program. He's telling himself, from now on, when I say slot A, I mean the hex number 6. He's making the assembly program easier to read for anyone else, which is very kind of him. You didn't know he had that in him, did you? It's very thoughtful. And he's written himself a little note there about his 16K RAM bank, which is quite nice. These are all genuine screenshots from tech. You can go and find this stuff. It's all there. So I put it to you that we stop worrying about the future with its unwieldy robots who think in a computer language from the early 80s and don't know how to work from home. I put it to you that we shouldn't be more afraid of intelligent machines than we are of intelligent people. And that Terminator teaches us the antidote to destruction is creativity. Sarah Connor is the maker, and the maker in these films is the agent of change. To change is to make, and to make is to change. And in a certain light, the Terminator franchise is not about the human war against machines, but about the eternal battle of people trying to start things versus people trying to end them. And it seems to be the creator, not the created, who holds the power. The future isn't written yet, and in both these movies, it's barely filmed either. It arrives in the present through snippets of awkward exposition, or as a newborn man, naked and defeatable. The future isn't the interesting bit. We have yet to learn what John actually does that's so special, or how successful he really will be in the seemingly insurmountable task of inspiring humans to overcome the machine army. To find out these things, one would have to watch the other two Terminator films, so unfortunately humanity will never know the truth. We do know that according to his mother, John is important. But of course, everyone thinks their kids are special. John Connor's role is vague and secondary compared to Sarah's. He is not the creator of a hopeful future, but the inheritor of the possibilities set up by his mother. The future, adult hero John is known only by his distant actions. In these films, John is a passenger. There might be hints of his future leadership in Terminator 2. But let's face it, there aren't many. He's no Simba. He's more like Bart Simpson, really, isn't he? Actually, he is quite cool. He does stuff like hacking ATM machines by conspicuously plugging a giant laptop into them in the middle of the street with his friend standing next to him, oh my God, what are you doing? Which is always the best way to steal people's card details. But everything he knows was taught to him by his mother, Sarah Connor, who's really underrated as a sort of inspiring hacker, I think. Sarah Connor is bloody well prepared. She is an awesome hacker by any standard. She subverts, she stands up for what she believes in, she can rise to any challenge. She's in a perpetually impossible situation, and things keep getting worse. If someone isn't trying to kill her, they're trying to kill her son, and if they're not trying to kill him, they're trying to kill the entire human race. She's excruciatingly trapped in the present while holding total awareness of the future, and all she can do is try to be heard, to do whatever she can to secure what she intuits, to fight and to run. So whether you're designing a future, a magazine, a book, or a computer program, it is much more empowering to be the originator than the supporter or the opponent. For all its destruction, the Terminators are films about the excitement and dangers of creativity. Discoveries, inventions, and realizations. Don't end up like Dyson. Don't just build on someone else's work. Trust your instincts, exist in the present, and always be the maker. That's the end. Thank you.